Hey guys and girls, Boardnell back with you, and on this video I will be talking about the Stranger Things 2 season finale. So this is Stranger Things 2 episode 9, chapter 9. It is called The Gate. Full spoilers from the start of this review, so exciting stuff. And once again, just like the first season, I think they absolutely nailed the finale. I can't really have any complaints about it at all. It really delivers on all fronts, and it perfectly pays off what the last episode set up and everything. So we obviously begin with the fallout from Elle returning, her making a surprise return, and it's a massive scene because it's the first time all the characters outside of Hopper have seen her for like the past year. It's particularly emotional for Mike, who's really mad at Hopper for keeping her from him and keeping it a secret. And that's a really good scene where Hopper takes Mike into the next room, and it sort of just stands there and takes it, and she does give a bit back, but it's mostly Mike shouting at him and calling him a liar and just really mad and frustrated. And Hopper's great in the scene because he just stands there, takes it, and is there for Mike because he can sense he's really emotional and gives him a hug when he like has a breakdown type thing of emotions. And it sort of shows how much of a fatherly figure Hopper can be for these kids. But you get really good selling from the whole group. Obviously it's the first time Max has seen Elle. Now there's something a little bit frosty there where, because Max is really good, like she introduces herself, says it's so nice to meet you, I've heard so much about you, but Elle doesn't reciprocate. She just sort of gives her a glare and walks off. It's obviously to do with her seeing her with Mike and maybe getting the wrong idea, maybe just because she's a new person in the group as well, and Eleven's not quite sure if she can trust her. But obviously there will be stuff later on when they get to bond, I'm sure. But for the time being, she's a little bit standoff with Max. But obviously there's a lot of emotion seeing her again. Joyce obviously is emotional, sort of the way she looked after Elle at the end of the last season, very sort of like a family member, like a daughter of her own. And what it all comes down to is then Elle 11 says she's prepared to close the gate, to save the world. She says she can do it one more time, but they obviously come up with the problem is then that would probably kill Will. So that's where they have the idea to try and burn the thing out of it. And again, some very intense scenes in this episode where things really get serious because he goes sort of all Exorcist or Evil Dead, like some of his reactions in those scenes with like the demons sort of turning evil and him turning evil and getting quite, agitated and violent. It definitely reminds me of those sorts of films, and because of the nostalgic show Stranger Things, it wouldn't surprise me if that was intentional. But some very intense stuff with Will. Once again, you really feel for his mother and Jonathan, and it's sort of important that Nancy is there for Jonathan during those scenes, and she even, gets involved herself, like when Will goes after Joyce, he like strangles his mother at one point. Nancy is there with like a hot poker to try and save her, and she's there for like emotional support for Jonathan, but she's also willing to get her hands dirty as well, which is great. And we do get a small scene with her and Steve where Steve pretty much gives Nancy permission to go and be with Jonathan. He has a really good line actually, which is where he says, because he basically says you should go and be with Jonathan, and says, the kids need me to babysit them. His line is something, even though I'm pretty shitty as a boyfriend, I'm actually it turns out I'm really good as a babysitter, which is a great line. And obviously I'll probably talk more about that scene with Rachel when she gets back, because I know she'll have thoughts on that scene, but I'm fine with it personally, and I just think Steve is more exciting as a character, more fun, more interesting when he is interacting with the kids and when he's looking after them. So it's a nice moment between them, and it just makes sense, and they go their separate ways here, and probably will always have a bond, but they go their separate ways. And once again, this episode does a good job of like really giving you like the different sides and the different groups and all the stakes that are building. It does a really good job of like keeping track of all of them and just how important each piece is, because of course those mischievous kids, that they decide then they've got to actually help out, because do their bit, because Hopper and Al go to the gate, and obviously the plan is to shut the gate when they get the word from from Jonathan, when they've hopefully got the thing out of Will that killed the virus from Will. But the kids want to go along and sort of make absolutely sure. They come up with a plan to try and kill them, like the monsters themselves, so that they don't get to like where Hopper and Al is. And so I'll talk a bit about that side with like Dustin, Max, Lucas. I think, is Mike there? I think Mike is there, but yeah, the whole gang, Steve, and because you get this thing where they're obviously trying to like go along and they want to go and help out, and Steve's like, no, you're not doing this. It's my responsibility to look after you. And you get things that sort of build in this. Now, I'll just mention quickly the sort of weird, sort of funny scene with Billy and Karen, because Karen, let's face it, she's looking for a bit of spice in her life because of what a clueless dork Ted is. So you get that sort of weird comedic scene of her in the bath reading the romance novel with like romantic music. Ted's fast asleep in the chair. The door goes, and it's Billy looking all hunky, or certainly hunky to Karen. And there's a flirtation there. She starts daydreaming about, maybe I could kick Ted out and I could be with the bad boy Billy. And he's obviously looking for Max. And I tell you what, it's the nicest Billy has been to anyone. I guess maybe because he's flirting a bit. But in that one scene, he actually does seem, like he's concerned for Max and is looking for her. But we saw in the last episode that his father turned out to be a complete arsehole and, really sort of threatened him to go and find find Max. So we saw, this explains a lot of why Billy is what he is. But yeah, that scene is very random and very weird. I'm not sure it quite fits Billy as a character, but he has sort of had this bad boy sort of persona since coming to town, and it sort of fits in the sense, and then Karen is kind of in a bit of a useless marriage with Ted, who is, so you can sort of see how she might daydream a bit, but it is what it is. Like, she gives him some directions to the buyer's house where she thinks that the Max should be there. So it sort of leads to Billy being an obstacle, and he obviously goes round, and there's a funny sort of moment where Steve like comes out and like covers for them, and then of course they're all up at the window, the douchebags. So Steve, it gives away their cover, but this is good stuff again because it pays off the stuff we've seen earlier in the season with like Steve and Billy and him sort of like bullying Steve, because Steve does actually stand up to him when he comes in the house and is all threatening, and Steve like hits him and then says get out, and he doesn't, he hits it again and gets onto a full fight, and Steve ultimately does lose. He gets like pummeled by Billy, which is a bit of a running thing because of course he got really his lights punched out by Jonathan last season. But it's a good character moment because he does stand his ground and actually defends the kids and has the guts to stand up to Billy. But in the end, of course, it's Max who saves Steve, and it makes a lot of sense, having she's been on the wrong end of it more than anyone else when it comes to Billy. So yeah, she uses like the baseball bat with the barb. I think she gives him like, first of all she injects him. Sorry, they've got the syringe, so Max actually injects him in the neck, which obviously takes him down, and then she holds like the baseball bat over him and threatens him. And I think she might give him one shot quite low down, but she just threatens him with it and says, from now on, you're going to leave me and my friends alone. Get out, she shouts. And it's a great moment. It's a great punch your air sort of moment. And eventually, obviously, Billy does, or I think he's knocked out or something. But and it has an effect because later on, when the episode ends, or near the end, and it's like going around the characters, Billy has like got the message. He's sort of backing off Max. He's not trying to like bully or dominate her again. So it's a great moment. And just to add to it, they decide to take Billy's car, and Max is actually driving, saying, "Well, I've had a bit of experience. I've driven cars around car parks before." So that's a really funny scene where obviously Steve is out for the count, so they sort of bundle him in the back of the car, and it's actually Max driving, and it's a really funny moment when Steve comes around and he's all like bruised and battered, and he's like, "Who's driving this car?" and obviously sees that Max is, and he starts trying to object and putting his foot down. And I do enjoy Dustin actually goading him into like looking after the kids, like saying it's Nancy would really appreciate it. So that's really good stuff. And they go and they do their bit. They go into the underground, where the whole pumpkin patch site was. And again, you get some really good horror moments, some really good edge of your seat type moments. They have to cover their noses a bit like Hopper did that time. I think there's one point where some of the stuff gets inside Dustin's like sort of mouth or nose, so it's quite edgy for him. But all this stuff with the gang is really good, and I also like the moment Dustin has with Dart, because Dart comes back and confronts Dustin, and it's sort of this moment where Dustin, who has obviously been a bit soft on Dart this season, has to actually confront him and do something. And ultimately he doesn't kill him. He just he gets the free Musketeers bar out and feeds him, and it distracts him long enough for them to like leave. And in a way, after that, nature takes its course because a bunch of the others come, and I think they get into some sort of a fight. That's sort of the idea, but it's I think it's that idea of nature taking its course and Dustin actually, finding a way to like handle Dart, which was really good, and says goodbye to it. So it's kind of emotional, but yeah, they do their bit and then they actually take them out. And it's, when Hopper and Al is at the entrance and they see fire, because they basically use like the fire to like blow them up sort of thing. And it's like, oh, okay, what happened there? But you get this fantastic, like cinematic sort of like climax building where Al and Hopper go down in like one of these like metal sort of lifts, and they go down and the fire's everywhere. It's surrounding them. These demon dogs are surrounding them, coming at them. Hopper's trying to cover out, shooting at them, and it just looks so impressive. Whoever came up with this sequence is a bit of a genius. It's really tense, and the only slight black mark I might give the episode is that then it sort of had to come back to a bit, like the Lost Sister episode, the episode 7, because Elle does have flashes of, her sister, and it's just relating it to that, because when she was telling Eleven to use your anger for something important or something like that. So it's not a massive deal, it's just flashes here and there, but in the end, obviously, that they shut the gate and Will survives and everything goes off well, but it's, once again, very well done. It's all about the characters at the end of the day, and that's what pulls you along. It's, as I said, it's very well done. It's very well directed and written and paced, and the tension is there. But ultimately, it's the character moments that really leave you so satisfied. So it's a great final episode, and I think this has been a worthy, sequel season. It's sort of up there, I think, with the first season. Probably, if not for that pointless episode 7, it might be very close. But as sequels go, it's a very good sequel. And of course, I'll just talk a little bit about how it ends, because you get like the school dance, which is actually set at winter for some reason. It's around Christmas time, but it's like a special snow themed type dance. So I guess that's a thing. And you also have, actually, I will say, then Dr. Owen survives, and there was a bit of tension over that. And that's a good scene, actually, because Hopper and now come across him, and he introduces Eleven to him, saying, this is someone, a girl who came out of that lab. And in his own, like, Hopper type way, he insists or suggests, when all this is over with, you will treat her, you will help her live her life as a regular girl, not as an experiment. So it's one of those things where he's obviously being very, suggesting in a very, Hopper type manner, So it's great stuff, and I do like that Owens actually turned out to be a decent human being and actually does the right thing in the end, and it might actually explain why he was so lenient with Nancy and Jonathan earlier in the season. But that's good stuff. There's a nice scene with him and Hopper when they cut to like a month later at the end in like a diner, and yeah, it's good stuff. And he says, because ideally he says you should wait about a month before the kids really think about going out or doing anything, just in case. And Hopper's like, well, could we just give them one night sort of thing? And of course he's talking about the dance. Another funny like little moment and a nice sort of payoff moment is you've got like the UFO guy waiting by the gates of the lab because they've shut down this government facility. And of course they acknowledge the whole thing with Barb. They acknowledge that the government were involved and covered up her death, so it means she can have a funeral, like the parents can put her daughter to death. So that's another nice touch, because that's sort of pays off something which they obviously set up at the start of this season. So that's really good stuff. But yeah, it's as they're closing this facility and these soldiers are driving away, you've got the UFO guy just waiting there and smiling and sort of waving, so it's just rubbing it in their face, and one of them like flips him off, which is really funny. I sort of do love that character, even though I know he's going to get some stick for sort of, kind of forcing the issue with Jonathan and Nancy, but I do kind of love him as like a comic relief type character. But yeah, we get the dance at the end, and it does all the beats so well with them getting ready. Obviously, Steve giving Dustin advice again. It gives him like the what was it, the Farrah Fawcett spray, the hairspray, which is, I tell you what, Dustin looks so freaky, so scary in that, but sort of adorable as well in his little suit. And they all go to the dance, and obviously it's a bit of a blow for Dustin because he's hoping, you know, to go out with Max. He's hoping to ask her to dance, and then the nail maybe sort of hook up, but instead there seems to be something between Max and Lucas. And Lucas actually like asks her to dance, and she does, and seems to be a thing there. And Dustin gets quite down, but then what happens is you get this sequence where he starts asking girls out, and one girl in particular, is it Stacy? I think her name is really like demeaning to him, and just walks away and says, "I don't think so." Again, you feel bad for the guy, but of course the whole thing is that Nancy's there, and because she's helping out at the dance, and she can see what happens, so she goes along and offers him to dance, and it's a big screw you moment to the rest of the dance, to the bullies, to Stacey, because it's like, hey, yeah, Dustin is now dancing with Nancy, who's a really attractive, good-looking gal, so one of the most popular girls in school, so screw you, Stacey, I guess is the message. But it's a great payoff, and Nancy gives him advice and says, you know, girls at this age can be really rough, but just give it a few years, they'll be going crazy over you. And it is quite sort of fitting because, of course, Dustin had a crush on Nancy, so it's a nice little moment where he actually gets to dance with like this crush he's had, but obviously it's a really nice scene where she's giving him advice and being nice and showing him how to dance. So yeah, the whole dance scene, I can't really fault. I do sort of love it as just like this nice moment for the characters that ties everything up, pays everything off. Will even gets offered a dance. He dances with a gal who like calls him Zombie Boy because of course he'd been drawing that comic, but she actually means it in quite a playful and fetchant sort of way, not as a way to mock him. So Will and this girl have a dance. Mike and 11 of course dance, and that's a big moment because 11 gets to have like an ordinary night as an ordinary sort of teenage girl. So she walks into the dance in a dress, which is a different look for her. Her and Mike have a dance, they have a kiss, and it's all very nice. Joyce and Hopper are on the outside. They're outside, just, you know, watching and keeping an eye on proceedings. So once again, the sort of, you know, figurative parents of Stranger Things are there looking after everything. So it's all very nice. And we get a fitting sort of ending, which is it cuts from that lovely dance scene to the Upside Down and to, well, Hellfire and Brimstone kicking off some sort of like big monster. I think it was meant to be a spaceship or something, and that's the end. And it's great stuff. I mean, obviously, I'm assuming at this point going in to the end of Series 2, they probably knew there was a Series 3, whereas at the end of Series 1, they maybe didn't know that. They weren't so sure of another season, but it's one of those. It's an ending which works either way, because it's sort of ending where it says, well, there'll always be stuff going on in the Upside Down. There could always be another threat out there at any time. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that is like built on, but yeah, that's Stranger Things too. I'm out of things to say, but a really satisfying second season, a great sequel season, which, bar that episode 7, I think really delivers in spades. So, thanks for listening. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. Share me out on social media. I'll be back soon with reviews of Season 3 as I get closer to the new season, which is the end of May. I know me and Rachel will have a special Season 2 discussion video at some point, so look out for that. But thanks for listening. Support me on Patreon, patreon.com/borednow, and I'll be back soon. Thanks, guys.